Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Hello, Matthias. Hello, Matthias. Hello, Matthias. Are you talking?
I cannot hear Matthias.
We cannot hear Matthias, right?
Hello, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, then I will start once more. Is the video stopped?
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully now it works. My own.
Yes, now we see you and hear you.
Okay. Slowly approaching. Okay, welcome everybody. Today we have a packed agenda. So first, Jerry and Eric will talk about Gardener integration on Alicloud. Next, we will hear from Alban about some security findings and also seeing some presentation held at KubeCon in Shanghai. And at the end, Raphael will talk about news from the Gardener release 0.14. So with that, I would hand over to Jerry. Jerry, are you still muted? We can't hear you.
Can you unmute?
Yeah, I will try. Yes.
There was a button.
If you
when you hovered
just
over his
over his
picture.
picture.
I know he's on. Hello?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Good. Okay. Sorry, I have a meeting. I just in our office and I cannot find a meeting room in Waldorf. Sorry. And firstly, hello everyone. My name is Jerry. I'm from SAP CP core team China. Yeah, so I'm quite new, and actually we're quite a new member of Gardener family. I didn't expect so many guys attending this gathering, and my big pleasure to share my experience on how to make Gardener running on Alibaba Cloud, or namely Alicloud. So actually at the beginning, we were not quite familiar with Alibaba Cloud, and neither we do not have any knowledge regarding Gardener. So we need to know whether there is a gap to make Gardener running on Alibaba Cloud. So we should do a POC first. The target of the POC is to put a fully functional. Okay, let's switch to the POC and fully functional Kubernetes cluster on Alibaba Cloud. The main mission of this POC is to put a Kubernetes cluster on Alibaba Cloud automatically, only by just normal way as Gardener, just by not from the dashboard, just by apply a shoot resource YAML to just on Garden cluster. And after that, you could manipulate this cluster by kube control on your computer. And we need to have a smoke test on this cluster. So we, wait a minute, please hide it. Smoke test on this cluster, just deploy a simple Nginx service on this cluster and expose ingress to the internet and have a test a simple HTTP request to this service. Only 2 stuff are done, so the POC is successful. Regarding the effort of the POC, it took only 7 days for 2 colleagues, me and Erica, to finish this POC. as we know, for Community Gardener project, we have several components. To accomplish this POC, we only modify the 3 components. The first one is Machine Controller Manager. The second one is Terraformer. The third one is Gardener. All of these components are all in GitHub. You can find it in our GitHub project, Gardener project. And how did we start it? Because we are quite new to Alicloud and quite new to Gardeners. So first we need to get familiar with Alicloud, such as some resources, such as computing resources, volumes, and networking that are quite fundamental for IaaS providers. And then we should get familiar with Gardener. We could use a shoot cluster from dashboard, very easy, but we need to know how does it work. So firstly, we go through the wiki. This wiki is in the Gardener project to set up local development and did a further investigation on how Gardener work. And then, we're developers. We need to find the working mechanism behind the scene. We could debug the code and okay, this is a more technical. We find a major breakpoint in shoot control reconcile file and get deeper understanding of Gardener landscape, how they were working when we boot a shoot cluster. On the same time, we need to implement Alicloud driver for Machine Controller Manager. For Machine Controller Manager is quite a standalone component, and it could be implemented and do rough testing without in Gardener environment, running environment. And then we need to check some other preconditions like Alicloud Terraform plugin. This is provided by Alibaba development team and published as a Terraform plugin on official Terraform website. And also we need to find some related Alicloud SDK and other stuff. And the next thing is to start to implement a Gardener API, and then for controller manager. Okay, then I would like to drill down what do we do in different components. First, for controller manager, we need, because controller manager is an operator architect. You should implement CRD first for Alicloud machine class, and then you should implement logic part for machine controller. That is to implement driver for Alicloud by using Alicloud SDK. I have a more detailed description on the slides. Later I will put on our public space. Okay, then I go to the next component. The Terraformer. Terraformer is a wrapper that could be run Terraform and it is also located in Gardener project. We just need to enable Alicloud Terraform plugin in configuration in the Terraform project. After that, Gardener API, the architect of Gardener API is Kubernetes Server API extension. So we also need to add some resources for resources definition for Alibaba Cloud. There are some detailed descriptions for resources. It includes Alicloud profile and shoot related definitions. And we need some APIs to control these resources. Kubernetes community provide some tool or tools to generate these APIs from the resource. We just run it by run generate code command. It is also located in the Gardener project. And lastly, we need our major part, the Gardener controller. We just need to implement the Cloud Botanist. For Alicloud, we have a re-implementation named Alicloud Botanist. You may reference AWS Botanist, and we can find what we need to prepare infra chart and some other stuff, other adapter stuff for Alicloud. To implement this, we didn't find enough documents regarding how to implement Botanist, but we're developers, and the code is the best document for us than normal documents, because we could refer the AWS implementation for Cloud Botanist. Okay, and that is some introduction about POC regarding how we did and what we did and how we did. And then we come to our real production code. There are some workarounds when we finish our POC. For example, we didn't use Alibaba Cloud DNS solutions. So if we need to merge our code into the master branch, we need to enable Alicloud DNS. And also, some of you must know that there are some restrictions to access internet from China to Google services. There are some images are put it on GCR repositories. So we need to do some or workaround or enhancement. We need to leverage container image registry provided by Alicloud. And also, there are some Kubernetes add-ons that need to be implemented because Alibaba Cloud support plugins are not Kubernetes entry implementation. So we need, and also we found some some add-ons like Cloud Controller Manager and the CSI add-ons already exists, already implemented by Alibaba Cloud development team, and still maybe these add-ons have some need to be enhancements. So we need to cooperate with Alibaba development team to enhance these add-ons. And for the POC, we have not implemented the Gardener dashboards. So we need to add Alibaba Cloud infrastructure configuration in Gardener dashboard. And last, we need to enhance my code qualities to get rid of some workarounds during POC. So this is what we did for us to enable Alibaba Cloud for Gardener. And anybody have questions? Don't hesitate to ask me.
Any questions or comments? Okay, that seems not to be the case. I find it great. I mean, just adding another.
Just a brief comment. First of all, thank you very much for sharing this. It's really, really interesting. You mentioned before that you were sharing your slides somewhere?
Yes, we will. We will put it into our public space. Everybody can access. There is,
okay.
Yes, you may find there some detailed stuff in our memo area.
We will put the link into the minutes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Can I stop the sharing?
Yes, if you're done, of course. Then we can.
Hi everyone, I'm George here from Bangalore. I had a question regarding where you would be backing up your etcd data because currently the backup sidecar doesn't support Alicloud.
Bucket store, right? We have object store. This is okay. This is what we did. I just forgot to put it in our PPT. This is not covered by POC, but it will be implemented in our production code. I will input the service name. I'm not familiar for Zoom. Okay, I will send you later. Okay.
Sure, thanks. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Any other questions? Otherwise, Alban can continue with security.
Okay. So. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I will talk about the security work we did to increase the security of all Gardener stakeholders. And that's something that the Gardener project team asked Kinfolk to do, to execute several penetration tests on Gardener installations, and then to identify possible issues and fix. And that's work that will include the security for all Gardener stakeholders in the open source community. So here I will share some of the findings. And that's findings that has been presented in KubeCon in Shanghai. Let me show you where it is. It's on the KubeCon page, and presented in a Gardener blog. I will show you where it is on gardener.cloud/blog. You can find this article on the link to an article presenting some of the findings we have found. So some scenarios, issues, and fixes. So now I will present some of those. The first one is this one is here we have a seed cluster and we have two shop clusters. And here we are in a scenario where we have shared the same cloud provider account for all the shop clusters. And in this scenario, we want to mount volumes into the worker node on Kubernetes so that the pods can access the data on the volumes. And to do that, in that scenario, we had the cloud provider account credential directly installed on the worker nodes. So if we have an installation with this scenario, the worker nodes can easily use the credential to access other volumes in the same cloud provider account. That's something which is preferably should be avoided. So what can be done is to avoid putting the credential on the worker node directly and leave them on the control plane. In this case, the worker node will not mount the volume directly, but will ask the control plane to mount it directly. So it means the worker node talks to the API server, the API server talks to the cloud provider API, and the cloud provider API will use the credential will be used to mount the volumes on the worker node. This can still be exploited maliciously if the worker node maliciously asks the API server to mount a volume that belongs to someone else. So there is some recommendation to protect against this issue. But before recommendation, the first thing is really better not to use the same cloud provider accounts for all the shoots, but to use different cloud provider accounts. If it is not possible, then there are some recommendations to do. First, not to put the credential directly on the worker node, and then an admission webhook could be used on the control plane to forbid the worker node to try to access different volumes from the neighbor shoots. Another issue I will present is a different scenario. So here we have the API server, and there are many different clients connecting to the API server. Some are users directly with kubectl, some are the worker nodes via the kubelet, and some are different components on the control plane. Each of those clients will have different rights, and the API server will grant or deny access to different resources. One possible configuration on Kubernetes, this is general Kubernetes upstream, is possible to install a proxy that will authenticate the clients, and then the API server will trust the proxy to authenticate correctly, and then the proxy will tell the API server this is a request coming from user Alice, for example. There is a maybe common misconfiguration that is possible when configuring the proxy. The API server could be configured to accept requests from a proxy when it is a request that is encrypted with a specific certificate authority. And if the same certificate is used for the proxy and for users, we have this situation that could happen. A malicious user could connect directly to the API server and pretend to be the proxy and say, oh, I'm connecting as Alice. And if the same certificate authority is used for both the proxy and for users, we have this situation where the IP server will trust that it's a valid request. The issue is when users set specific HTTP headers and they could impersonate another user and gain privilege. To avoid that, it's really a configuration issue. So the correct configuration should be used. We should use different certificate authority for different things. And the Kubernetes already had a warning in the documentation to say to not do that. And we improved the documentation to make it clearer. Now we'll present a different possible issue. It's about the metadata service. Many cloud providers provide the metadata service accessible on an endpoint with the IP address like 169.264.168.264, or on Alicloud a different IP address. And often the metadata service provides bootstrap information, for example, a kubectl, and it can contain a credential to talk to the cloud provider API. So that could be sensible private information. And before we had installation of Gardener with Grafana, and Grafana was offered as a service to users, so they can inspect what's happening in the shoot cluster, and that Grafana was installed on the control plane. So that's something we explored. The general architecture was this. The user access Grafana in the control plane through a load balancer, and Grafana was connected to Prometheus, which was gathering information from the worker nodes. In this, in Gardener in general, the users has access to the worker node. They have full control over the worker node, but they should not have control over the control plane. What happened is Grafana could be reconfigured by the user to not access only Prometheus, but access the metadata service with this IP address, and there get private information like credentials or passwords. And that's how it happened, that the Grafana UI has a feature to add a new data source where you can add the IP address of a metadata service. And then when using the Chrome or Firefox debugging tools, there is a way to access credentials that lives on the metadata service. To avoid this issue, it's recommended to mind which entrance Grafana has access to. In this case, Grafana had access before on the metadata service. And then to use network policy in the control plane to block unnecessary access. Or if it's not necessary to have Grafana, even to not install Grafana at all in the control plane, which is what is done now. And the last issue I will present is about a malicious HTTP request. So the API server is a main component of Kubernetes, and it mainly receives TCP connection from clients, from users, Kubernetes, and the different components of the control plane. But mostly the API server does not initiate outgoing connections. It mostly receives connections to edit Kubernetes resources like pod services, replication sets, etc. But there are a few commands where the API server initiates outgoing connections. One example is the command kubectl exec. When the user runs kubectl exec, the API server receives that request and then will connect to the worker node, to the kubelet, to say I want to have streams to the container to have a standard input, standard output, and so on. And how it works, instead of having the traffic, the stream going through the kubelet on this container interface on the container runtime, the kubelet has the option to send a HTTP redirect to the API server so that the API server connected directly to the container runtime interface. In this case, it's possible if you have modified version of kubelet to do HTTP redirect to something else. In this example, we could have the kubelet, instead of applying HTTP redirect to CRI, maliciously reply connect to other components of the control plane. For example, the metadata service, as we have seen before, or different other components. In this case, the user could trigger the API server to get access to some resources in the control plane that they should not have access to. There are different ways to be protected against this issue. One way is there is a Kubernetes fix that had a feature to block such HTTP redirect to only allow the valid HTTP redirect, not the one we have seen before. Or another way is to add network policies in the control plane so that the API server can only access the resource it should have access to, in this case, not a metadata service or other things. So in Gardener, it was fixed using network policies, and the fix is in the latest version. So it's something which is protected in last versions. Finally, so securing Kubernetes cluster is hard, and we have seen something which is quite dangerous, like share account model, which could be avoided. This is work which is still going on to check potential issues in Kubernetes and Gardener, but we are still working on making Gardener safer. That's it. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Alban. Do we have any questions or comments? Okay, seems not to be the case. It's a pretty silent meeting today. Do we have Raphael in the call meanwhile?
So Raphael couldn't make it today, and he asked me to jump in spontaneously.
Okay.
So let me do that.
And then take over.
Thanks. Okay, great. So yeah, this week we released a new Gardener version. It's 0.14, sorry. Yeah, and I'd like to go quickly over the most notable changes we introduced in this release. Okay, so as always, through those releases, we have different other components which are released there too, or deployed with this release. For example, we have the AWS load balancer re-advertiser, as well as the LCD backup restore. And in the AWS load balancer re-advertiser, we fixed, or an issue has been fixed, which caused a panic when the subset of an endpoint was empty. And in the LCD backup restore, there was also an issue being fixed, which affected Delta snapshots. And yeah, so small fixes concerning this. And of course, the Gardener release itself, just let me go firstly over the actions which are required. For example, the first one is that we now changed our Gardener Helm chart. So the values themselves haven't been changed, but the structure itself has changed. So now the Helm chart is divided into two parts. It's runtime application, which you can also see when you enter the project and navigate through it through the Gardener Helm charts. You will see now a directory for runtime and for application. And this change forced us to also restructure the values.yaml file. So you can now have, you now see that the top element of this values YAML file is now a key called .global or global. So it's only a restructuring in those terms, but something you have to be aware of. Okay, so the second thing is we also introduced some validation concerning networking for seeds and shoots. And the consequences are mainly that if you had shoots or seeds, if you had those resources in the past, which were already invalid, you should certainly remove those objects or these resources before you upgrade the gardener, because afterwards it would not be possible anymore to get it into a clean state through those validations. So basically before it was not even possible to get a clean or a healthy shoot cluster with this invalid configurations, but these weren't checked before. So now they are checked, that you don't have that you have the right network settings for your workers, shoot networks, and so on. And yeah, so these are checked now before you create the resources. Okay, last but not least for the actions items, if you had a logging feature enabled by a gardener, you should delete the persistent volume related to the central Elasticsearch service. So yeah, just simply delete it via this command, and then you're good to upgrade the gardener. Okay, so these were concerning the actions which are required. Are there any questions to that part? Okay, so let me move on to the most notable changes we published with this release. So first we find out then that there were an issue on on the nodes of the endpoint of the nodes of the shoot clusters, which caused orphaned containers being created, and this has now been fixed. Yeah, so the Kubernetes dashboard is also revised in terms of that the dashboard itself does now only have the necessary privileges it needs to have to run. So if you'd like to log into the dashboard now, you will probably get some privileges, some privilege errors that you're not permitted to list some of the resources, and that is due to that change. So in order to have all the dashboard functionalities you had before, you need to log in with the credentials that are provided in the shoot Qt config you get by Gardener. So there's a basic auth section which you can list, and yeah, you get the authentication information from there. You need to enter to the dashboard in order to see everything nicely as before. So I think this is a really important point if you used the dashboard, the Kubernetes dashboard before. Okay, we also improved the conditions on the shoots itself. So before we had several conditions, it were true, false, and unknown. And now we also introduced the so-called progressing state. And the progressing state is kind of an intermediate state. So for example, if a health check itself fails for a certain period of time, then it keeps in the progressing state, because we kind of expect that, for example, if you roll something or so on, that the service itself is not available for a certain period in time, for a few seconds or so, and so it just transitions to the progressing state, and yeah, so that you know, or that the users and the shoot owners know that this is a kind of an intermediate state here. Okay, so the shoot seek binding reference themselves are turned immutable now, so you cannot change them afterwards, after the shoot has been created, or the shoot manifest. And we enabled our shoot clusters on AWS to use the network load balancer out of the box, and this is now possible because we changed some network policies on AWS side for the worker subnets from all client IPs. That was necessary to let you get the network load balancer. Further on, we improved some infrastructure tasks when it comes to reconciliation of shoot clusters. For example, now we only execute the Kube2 IAM as well as the infrastructure jobs only when the shoot itself is in maintenance mode, or if it is annotated with this maintain annotation. And this will eventually prevents the reconciliation to run into quota issues, which we experienced in the past. So this is some further improvement in those terms. Okay, so you may remember that I think it was in the last community meeting I presented the certificate management from Gardener, and in this release, Gardener itself also releases or includes the certificate management finally. So if you have enabled the feature and configured it properly, then you can request certificates for managed domains for Ingress resources, which are annotated by this annotation, by this label, sorry. Okay, so we further improved the hibernation feature of Gardener, and it's now also possible to do this via schedule. So you can, in the shoot manifest, in spec hibernation schedules, you can configure it via a cron spec, and then you can have a schedule when your shoot cluster automatically gets hibernated and woken up. So this is especially interesting for example, for development purpose, if you like, or services that do not need to be, clusters that do not need to be constantly up, for example, during the weekend or so for a developer. And this will finally save a lot of money. And it's also convenient because it now happens automatically, or it is automatically scheduled by Gardener. We also introduced a new condition for shoot clusters. We now have them for API server availability. Then we have a new alert manager instance in the seed cluster, and so we, through this change and through this change, it's now possible via the SMTP configuration to send out emails if there's some notification happening here. So, for example, for shoot clusters annotated with this operated by annotation, and then the corresponding email of the receiver, he gets an email concerning these notifications. Then we also included instant reconciliation, so you can now instruct a shoot cluster to enter the reconciliation immediately by annotating the shoot with this annotation. Further on, we introduced an aggregated cluster role called Garden Subcloud IO System Administrators. So if you need to have administrator rights in the Garden cluster, then you probably need to assign the cluster role via binding to the users you want to have those permissions. Okay, so last but not least, I already mentioned that is also concerning the ingress resource and the certificate management. And so this is now for the operator part. If you want to have this service in the Gardener, then you will need to enable it via a feature gate, as well as you need to have a certificate management in place. And in order to do that, you can follow the example, which is in the Gardener repository, and then you can set up the certificate management service for Gardener and the shoot clusters. Okay, so these were the notable changes concerning Gardener, the next release of 14. Any questions to these? Okay, like Matthias mentioned, still a quiet meeting.
Maybe we can wake up everybody. Jerry's notified us that he also wants to give a demo on Alicloud. Maybe this creates some reactions in the audience. So Jerry, take over.
Okay, thank you. And it's a live demo. Hope it works. And I will share my desktop first. Just introduce my landscape setup. It will be demoed in our development landscape setup. First, I have a Garden cluster running on Azure, which is located in the South Asia. And of course, we need a seed cluster, also a single node cluster. It's located in Alibaba Cloud, located in Shanghai. Now, my demo is to, about the Garden cluster, only API server is running because it is in a development mode. I have a code directly run to connect to the Garden cluster. This is a Garden controller manager. So it is already running now. And I tried to apply a shoot resource to Garden cluster. This is Garden cluster. Get as because I'm currently in Germany, so the network has some latency. And you may notice they're already set up for Garden stuff except the Garden controller manager. Only API server is running because controller is running on my desktop. Anyway, I try to have a look at what shoot YAML looks like. Really quite similar, like AWS. This is a part of Alibaba Cloud setup for network. And I try to apply the resource. This is a big debug console. You may notice the logs from Gardener Controller Manager is being popped up on our screen. And let's take a look at what happened in in seed cluster kubectl namespace.
Really far away.
This is for the first time. Anyway, this is the shoot namespace I just deployed. This is for shoot namespace. This is for backup namespace. Ignore this space. I try to delete, but some resources cannot be purged. Anyway, just forget about it. And let's have a look at the services. You may notice API services has already been deployed and with the external IP. This is a out-tree plugin named Cloud Controller Manager for Alibaba Cloud, because it will generate a load balancer automatically. And this is API server IP address. There is the domain I have. Because we have its development landscape, my computer always cached the DNS because the domain always be used constantly. This is a region. This is the API server domain. Hope it will take effect. What? A minute. This is a computer in SAP Labs China. Let's look up. Okay, it works. Maybe I need to do a hack. It seems I will do a hack. What happened? Just get back and get to take a look at what is happening regarding the pods in this namespace. What happened?
Oh, this full.
For CSI. Actually, I just mentioned that there are some issues for CSI still. Let's get a look at so many PVs, and it cannot be released automatically. I need to contact to work contact Alicloud team, development team to cooperate on this issue. It could be auto-provisioned, but cannot be auto-deleted.
So that's a missing feature, or?
I don't know. I don't know whether I did a misconfig or just the issue of CSI plugin. And actually, I tested okay yesterday.
Can you delete in the Alicloud console directly one of these volumes? Then we would have enough quota.
Yes. I'm sorry, maybe it'll take a longer time for you. So many. This is Alibaba Cloud console. There are some volumes. Some of them are in use by my colleague. I don't know whether they're used because they has another development landscape. Some of them are in use for. Okay, let's have a try to go back. This issue is planned to be fixed when I come back to Shanghai, but I didn't expect it will hamper our demo process.
Yeah, don't worry if it doesn't run. I saw that you have configured a VPC ID. So have you implemented already the part that in Terraform that creates everything?
Yeah. Yes. And
okay.
Sure, we could demo some part that is created by this shoot just now. If you like, I would do a better preparation maybe next
sure
meeting.
Yeah, but the reason you have now configured the VPC ID, when you briefly showed the shoot resource, I saw it, is
okay.
So in general, it works also creating the networks and everything else.
There is a tricky part. Yes, you are right. You have a sharp eye. I have specified the VPC in the shoot because we need to reuse it. To create a NAT gateway is very, very not very expensive, but is not cheap. Every time I create a VPC NAT gateway, it will be charged for fee about more than €1 one day. It not charged by hourly, but charged by daily. So
okay.
I try to reuse this VPC, and I could, of course, when I set up a VPC as blank or have this field and set up CIDR, it works. I tried several times. This to support reuse the existing VPC is literally implemented just after the original one.
Yeah, understood. So both work and
yeah, both works.
Mm-hmm.
And EIPs, of course, you have seen, and DNS entries, it works. Do I need to show the entries in our console? These resources, I suppose maybe our demo part cannot go on because I have to do some manifix about the PVs
Yeah, sure, no problem. I mean, it's anyways 11 o'clock. So when you have merged it, we could maybe then run another demo.
Sure.
No problem. No problem. Thanks a
Sure,
lot.
I
That
will.
was really very interesting. I mean, most parts of it seem to work already then for Alibaba Cloud.
Mhm.
Or yeah, great.
Actually, for PV stuff, in POC, it is not covered in the POC. It's in production. We should support it and make it run. No so obvious errors. We're trying to figure out it.
Yeah, it's work in progress. Thanks a lot for the demo.
Thank you.
Give a good impression about the status.
Okay. Sorry about it. That I didn't expect like this. Okay, maybe next time I will demo you real workable. Maybe together with our dashboard.
Yeah,
all good. Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
So
bye.
Bye-bye.
Any questions?
Yeah.
Again, back to silence. Okay, thank you everybody for presenting. We're at the end of our community meeting. We will have another one shortly before Christmas, and I think then we'll have some break for vacation time. I'll send around when the next meeting will be after in the new year.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ultra.